Greetings. Churches and Christian men worldwide have over the years discovered an amazing array of ways to be faithful to Christ in loving God's people. That still goes on. What new things might you and your people come up with? This is The Practicing Christian, and this week's report, Redesigning Our Practices. Nothing stays quite the same. Persian rugs long ago changed to use aniline dyes rather than plant extracts. The plumbing in a new house is no longer heavy with cast iron and lead. Tubes have vanished from most radios. And Granny knits with nylon, acrylic, and alpaca, as well as with merino and pima fibers. Church bells are often electronic, not brass. Live streaming worship is not only a newish phenomena, but a dozen different alternative systems now exist to improve on it. Bible readings, prayers, and more are available to all people online. Although we do have to say that worship, where live Christians share the bread of heaven and the water of life, may not quite be worship. Well, that is, rather, where they share the bread of heaven and the water of life. But just the stuff on TV, we have questions. An interesting group to read about is the Bruderhof, a century-old Protestant community that migrated to Paraguay to escape the Nazis, and now has settlements in 6 different countries. Their life of prayer and peace has been oriented toward producing worship and devotional materials for others. They show us that existing organizations are not always needed, and nor are existing ways to seek our Lord. An interesting Catholic site you might want to take a look at also is benedictfriend.org/resources.html. And try Orthodox Wiki, wiki.org/main_page, M and P capitalized, for Orthodox work, and you can listen to Ancient Faith, A and F capitalized, .com while you search these files. But sometimes the variation or changes that we can bring to our Christian life have a long previous history. Many British and European churches have banners and flags of battles, wars, kings, saints, and more displayed in the nave, what we might call the auditorium, or the crossing, the transept, but not in the chancel. Often these are banners on poles that extend over the congregation. In America, some churches have our federal flag and perhaps the Charles Overton Christian flag, which was designed in 1897 to represent Protestants in general. There are Catholic, Lutheran, Episcopal, and Orthodox flags, and even Baptist, Pentecostal, and Quaker flags and banners. Enter Christian flags and banners on your search line, then images when that comes up, to scroll through some of these. Many of them are imaginative and have probably never been used, but they might give you some ideas for your own church or your own front door. If you look at Christian/Methodist/etc. period, bumper emblems, or lapel pins, or other sites, you may find some more stimulating ideas. At least 3 times a year, I'll find a pamphlet, or a single-page note, or a letter, left in my locker, or in my car, or on my desk. No name, no message personally. Some of these are Christian messages, others not, and a few are just goofy. I've sometimes thought, what would I write to leave for someone else? Perhaps you've thought about this as well. Missions didn't really exist before the 1500s. Monastic groups began to do this sort of work, followed by churches and associations of churches, which began starting missions. Some directed their work toward specific groups, like children, or merchant seamen, or Slovaks, or businessmen, or union members, or those in poverty. Then individuals and small groups began working independently. Some even established family mission programs. Maybe a family with 15 adults could choose to start a Christian school in New Zealand or Paraguay. Or you might want to help greet and perhaps provide hospitality to some of the roughly 30,000 missionaries who come to the U.S. each year, and most of these are Christians. I've run across one sort of weird way to deal with the money we set aside for God. These men take the percentage of money they set aside for God's work for the year, and instead of giving it to their church, invest it for long-term growth. Next year, they add the year's gift to the investment. But this time, they take out a given percentage of the entire investment, say 10% or whatever, and give it to the church. At the end of a decade of gifts, there's nearly 10 years' worth of growth, and that percentage is still being taken out annually and given to the church at the end of the year. When they die with perhaps 50 years of giving to their fund, no more money goes in, except for dividend reinvestments. But the fund keeps on giving year after year. Now, perhaps half of all of our church close in our lifetime. But your money, assigned by your heirs, could go to a new church year after year after year. Beats having it swallowed up in an anonymous denominational fund if your church closes. That's weird in some ways, but some men do just this. There are artists doing drawings or paintings of our children with Jesus. Some bakers prepare whole grain, yeast-free pita bread, just as Jesus had at the Last Supper, and they sell or give it to churches. A very few artists will hand-paint Christmas cards to order for you. Others, more commonly, will paint a watercolor card for you and send you the JPEG digital file for you to have reproduced on cardstock. Knowing how hard it is to write to a friend who just had a close loved one die, someone I know in Georgia is thinking about contacting those who need to do this, then writing for them what these people feel in notes and cards to be sent to the survivors. There are churches where one man has begun an online memorial page for church members who have died in the Lord so that the history of that branch of the church triumphant may continue through time. Some churchmen offer matching gifts to youth who want to buy a good study Bible. Some do the same for children and youth who want to go to church camp. It even happens to survivors of limited means who want to have a reception after the funeral of their dead loved one. And it's almost common to see such gifts made to men who want to represent their church at an annual assembly, but are a bit short of the cost of doing this. Local newspapers, even big city ones, used to print photos of all the engaged young women. Few do this now. A co-op of church people from different congregations could publish a paper with all their local church news and programming, and pictures of all the newly engaged women. To sum up, God's Spirit can stimulate our imaginations to do many things that we may never have seen or heard of before. we can encourage every practicing Christian to discover his or her own spiritual gifts and to reach new heights of service to our Lord and to his people. Serve then, be the King's right arm.